Growing Big with Steve Bartylla.
We all get excited when we produce a thriving food plot. Good reason. We put blood, sweat, and tears into that work. We prayed for rain, and man, it came up, and it is thriving. Keep one thing in mind, though. We are not cash cropping. When it comes to food plots, what we're trying to do is we are trying to grow food for deer. Okay, that is very, very different than trying to make a living farming. Okay, weeds aren't necessarily a bad thing, especially broadleaves, so long as they are not taking over our plots. They're our friends, they're deer food. Okay, we can even use those broadleaves to our advantage when we're trying to establish crops, that are in food plots that are just too small, that are going to get too much browse pressure. Those weeds help take a little browse pressure off the plots. Now, first, the deer are going to eat the weeds. As I said, weeds, broadleaves, a good majority of them, frankly, are deer food. So those weeds take some feeding pressure off of our candy crops. Now, the next thing they do is deer, when they're eating, they don't like getting poked in the face like that. So when the weeds are higher than the food itself, and they have to nuzzle their way down in there to get at our food plots, again, it takes some pressure off our food plots. And that can be an issue. When we're dealing with small plots, high deer numbers, what ends up happening is the deer overbrowse the plots. As they overbrowse the plots, they wipe it out. Now, once the broadleaf competition gets to be too high, oftentimes there are various herbicides we can use, but more often than not, we don't even have to do that. Just go in there and mow it high. Lap off those broadleaves. Give our food plot a chance to go ahead and come back up in and fill in. The other thing we can do is mix in a foliar fertilizer if we're going to go ahead and go the chemical route. Okay, that way, what ends up happening is the chemicals are absorbed by the bad plants, along with the fertilizer. That goes ahead and really gives those noxious weeds a growth spurt. Okay, we want that because on foliar fertilizers and foliar herbicides, you have to have contact with the living plant. That living plant sucks in those chemicals, and that's what kills them. Okay, so by also having the fertilizer in there, it's like, man, I got to get growing here. I got to get growing. So they suck in more of the chemical that kills them. At the same time, our food plot, we're using a herbicide. For example, on clover, we're spraying a grass killer. So that grass killer is not harming our clover. Okay. But the fertilizer is giving it a growth spurt. Now, take a brassica plot. On a brassica plot, we're trying to get rid of the grasses. Again, the herbicide doesn't hurt the brassicas, but the fertilizer gives it a nice little growth spurt to help get ahead of the weed competition. So what you end up doing is you end up killing three birds with one stone. You protect the food plot with weeds during its most vulnerable state. Then you go in and you wipe out the weeds while giving your food plot an extra growth spurt once the weeds start getting to be too much of a competition. Always remember, we're not cash cropping out here. What we're trying to do is we're trying to grow food for deer. Broadleaves, most of them are food for deer. Do not view them as the end-all, be-all enemy. Grass, that's a problem. Broadleaves can be a good thing, though. Another trick that really helps us a lot is top seeding. Seed types such as Antler King's Trophy Clover, which obviously is a clover, with some rape mixed in with it. Honey Hole, which is their brassica product. Fall, Winter, Spring, which is their cereal rye. Lights Out, which is their oats. All of those seed types end up germinating fairly well. They're easy to grow. So, let's say we're dealing with a plot that has overfeeding pressure. The deer are just over browsing it so hard they're wiping it out. In that case, what we can do is we can often go in there and just simply top seed other seeds into the plot. So now we're giving it a 1-2 punch. Say our brassicas are getting hammered. Well, guess what? We can go ahead and come up with a mixture of lights out and fall, winter, spring, oats and cereal rye. And we can top seed that into our brassicas. So now once the brassicas are gone, man, here's another shot of food coming up underneath it. We got cereal rye and we've got oats. Same with Red Zone, Antler King soybean product, okay, which is also mixed with a bunch of other stuff. You know what? You want to give that an extra 1-2 punch, go ahead and top seed that with the fall, winter, spring, and lights out of cereal rye and oats. Okay, so now after that food gets wiped out, you got another shot coming in. When it comes to farm crops such as corn or farm soybeans, you can go ahead and throw honey hole brassicas on top of the soil once those leaves start to turn.
Growing Big is brought to you by Wildlife Research Center, the gold standard. Reconics, see what you've been missing. Antler King, bigger bucks, healthier deer. The Heater Bodysuit, you stay warm or your money back. Furminator, the best food plot implement on earth. Bush Hog, performance you can count on. Redneck Blinds, the best hunting blinds on the planet. Chestnut Hill Nursery and Orchards. And foodplotsfordeer.com, planning your habitat improvements and improving your hunting.
So always remember, we are not cash cropping out here. We are farming for deer. All we're trying to do is produce deer food. Broadleaves can be our friends in those regards. They are not our bitter enemy. And we can go ahead and top seed things such as fall, winter, spring, a cereal rye, lights out oats, obviously an oat. Trophy clover is great for frost seeding into crops. Honey hole is a really easy brassica planting that's going to go ahead and produce decent growth simply by throwing it on top of the dirt. You do those things, you're going to stack the odds of producing deer food, even if they don't look like those pictures of the food plots look like they belong on a cover of a magazine. That's great for writers like me, but it's unimportant for deer hunting. Deer hunting, all that matters is we got food there that the deer want.
Growing Big with Steve Bartylla.